This week, Jonathan Roizin from Flow Security is with us to discuss data security posture management. Then in our second segment, we'll detail how the recent Uber attack occurred and what we can learn from it. Finally, in the enterprise security news, Fortanix raises a $90 million Series C for data security. Cerebro raises a $40 million Series C for MSSP SOC solutions. Dig Security raises a $34 million Series A. Yes, this is a repeat from last week, but we didn't get a chance to talk about it. Internet 2.0 gets funded, but probably not what you're thinking. How to hire and build your cybersecurity team. The NSA gives some bad advice on securing software. Courtroom drama. Oracle makes a really bad whoopsie. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
Don't leave the door open. Secure your APIs with the Curity Identity Server. Curity allows you to centralize identity management policies with a solution developed by an expert team using well-established standards. Curity facilitates scalable security for apps and websites by offering a unique combination of identity and access management with API security. Protect your users, secure apps and websites, manage API access. Start your free trial today at securityweekly.com/Curity. Companies big and small are using AwareGo's human risk assessment to measure the human risk factor in cybersecurity. This interactive solution allows companies to measure employees' knowledge and behavior across threat vectors such as phishing, passwords, sensitive data, and more. After completing the assessment, CISOs can identify vulnerable departments and roles and improve internal policies or procedures. Visit securityweekly.com/AwareGo to start your free trial. Customers want fast and frictionless digital experiences, yet also expect protection against breaches, privacy violations, and fraud. Drive engagement by optimizing security and convenience to attract and retain customers. Use the PingOne cloud platform to build, test, and optimize digital experiences. The no-code orchestration engine weaves together authentication, user management, and MFA, all of which can enhance security, drive engagement, and boost revenues. Visit securityweekly.com/ping-identity to learn more. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy Hobbit Day. This is episode 289, recorded on Thursday, September 22nd, 2022. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is the Master of Marketing, the Mayor of Mayhem, Tyler Shields. How are you, Tyler?
I am doing well, doing very well. How are you doing, Adrian?
I'm doing good. I could use some sleep. It's been a busy week, but yeah, otherwise doing pretty good. How are you with Hobbits?
I do have a question about The Hobbit, Adrian.
Yeah.
So, have you watched any of the new show, the Lord of the Rings on was it Amazon Prime? I think it's streaming.
The Rings of Power. Yes, I have.
That's the one. And what's your thoughts so far?
It's okay. It's not bad. It's I was dreading it would be awful, and it's not awful. It's not amazing, but it's not awful.
Yeah, I'm simultaneously doing that and the new season of the prequel of the Game of Thrones stuff, and the sharp contrast between like super fantasy versus more modernized. I have not been able to watch any of the Rings one at all because I've just got sucked into the Game of Thrones side.
Oh, really? Yeah, I've actually, I'm not sure if I'm going to watch that one for the same reason I never finished The Boys, in that like when violence gets to a certain point, I'm just not sure I'm enjoying it anymore. Like when I want to relax and watch something, when I want to relax and watch something, I don't know that I want to see people like graphically explode on screen, you know?
Yeah.
Like gore and guts and everything everywhere. I don't know. I was much more sensitive to it when the kids were young for some reason. Like all of a sudden I was really sensitive about violence. Like they didn't even have to be in the room. It would just affect me different. But maybe I'm still coming out of that. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely don't watch the latest season of The Boys. That's for sure.
I mean, every episode, it's almost like the to-do list for an episode is like gore. Like there's got to be some scene, like somebody graphically dies in the most horrible way. Somebody who runs really fast drags somebody onto pavement. You know?
Yes. Yep.
Oh boy. Oh boy. All right. Also joining us is the czar of Zero Trust, the captain of content, Katie Tytler. How are you, Katie?
Hello. Happy Thursday.
Are you watching any of these shows?
I am not. I might just get kicked out of the security industry, but sci-fi doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, it's I mean, do you watch a lot of stuff? Like what's your jam? Is there any?
Not really. We just finished watching Sneaky Pete on Amazon Prime, and that was really, really good.
Okay.
And finished before that rewatching Dexter. And now we are in the middle of Halloween Baking Championship, some really riveting TV series for prime time.
What is it? Halloween what?
What do you mean? You like to cook? So on Food TV, they have these baking championship series, and there's Holiday Baking Championship, Halloween Baking Championship, and Spring Baking Championship.
It's just all.
And this one is
cooking.
Halloween Baking Championship. So they have all the contestants. I think they start with 12, and they have a theme each week, and they have ingredients they have to use, and then it's like it's a big challenge, but.
No, I enjoy that stuff. I love that stuff. I eat it up, one could say.
We've gotten some really good ideas for cakes from those shows as well. And we try to bet, not monetary, just at the beginning of the series who we think will make it through to the end and see if we're right. Yeah. And so it's kind of fun. Awesome. I know it's not sci-fi. There's no Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Star Trek, etc., but it's cake. So what's bad with cake? Right.
Everybody loves cake.
Except probably Tyler.
Except for maybe Tyler, who Tyler doesn't like all kinds of normal things
like at all.
Like Keanu Reeves and chocolate and
Anyway. And cake. Adrian, I don't like cake.
You'd be happy to hear that Tyler, today is White Chocolate Day, which white chocolate, as everyone knows, answers the question: what if we took chocolate and removed most of what people like about it?
Then it turns into something that I really love. I actually like white chocolate.
Of course. Oh my God, you're such a contrarian.
I am.
Well, just because everybody else hates it. If that's not true. I enjoy white chocolate, but I'll say I hate it because otherwise Tyler will change his mind.
Not true. Not true at all.
Gus having fun with the wipes there. Yeah, so it's there's some, for those listening, there's some visual gags going on. But you can celebrate Hobbit Day today by rewatching the original Lord of the Rings, which is really good, and continuing to ignore that the Hobbit trilogy exists because it was really bad. So that's my suggestion. And maybe check out the Rings of Power. It's okay. It's not terrible. It's not great. Well, it's great. It's just not amazing.
It's great. It's not. It sucks. Don't watch it. It's perfect. Have a great time with it.
The first season isn't done yet. The jury's partially still out, but it's watchable.
Adrian, we have a guest here with us today.
We do. Are you trying to say I'm taking too long?
I'm being a little subtle for you, brother, but we got a guest here today. Yeah. Let's introduce our guest.
Well, before we do that, we do have a quick announcement here. Security Weekly listeners save 20% on InfoSec World 2022 passes. InfoSec World will be held September 27th through the 29th at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW and use the code ISW22-SecWeek20 to secure your spot now. And that's 1 week. That's next week. So yeah, if you haven't already made travel plans to go and check that out, I hope you're maybe local to that and you can go check that out. But yeah, it's been a great conference in the past. Interested to hear how it goes this year. I think this is the first in-person one in a while that they've done. All right, so today's interview, the topic is DSPM, which is Data Security Posture Management. And we're excited to have Jonathan Roizin with us today to help us understand this relatively new security product category. Jonathan is the CEO and co-founder of Flow Security. This is his second startup, and he previously led investigations for an IR firm. And welcome, Jonathan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Any opinions on Hobbits or Lord of the Rings or White
So
chocolate?
Actually here I'm a combination because I'm on Katie's team that I'm not a big sci-fi fan, but I'm a big white chocolate fan. So I would say it's a combination of the panel today.
Interesting. That's great.
Very diplomatic.
Very diplomatic. All right. So the reason, Jonathan, we wanted to have you on is when new categories pop up like this, everybody's struggling a little bit to understand some of the marketing, understand why we've got this new category, why now, how it works, what the advantages of it are, why didn't we see this 5 years ago? There's all kinds of questions when a new market pops up, and this is shaping up to be a pretty big one. So I guess just starting out here, how did this get started? I guess from your perspective, I think everybody's familiar with the concept of DLP, and existing data security tools that we have. What was missing, and what drew you towards this particular area of security?
Sure. So yes, data security is nothing new, right? Every time, whenever there is data, there's data security as well. But something that has changed lately, it is something that I've seen. I've been doing cybersecurity in the last 15 years or so, both as an offensive cybersecurity practitioner, and as you said, I also led incident response investigation. And data security was always a challenge, but in the last few years, it became an almost impossible task. And the reason is that the environments are changing very radically. Things used to be somewhat under control. Environments were simple. There was one place where data can be in, one or maybe a few, and that's about it. But this is, of course, not the case anymore. Environments have changed radically. They're much more fragmented. They change all the time. Therefore, for security teams, protecting data is a bigger challenge than ever. And this is why we see such a big rise of data security posture management category, and in general, the need for protecting data now more than ever.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I'm not entirely clear on is this category specifically in the cloud, or does it transcend cloud and extend to everywhere that data might be?
I think that when you're talking about protecting data, it's different than other verticals in cybersecurity. Because if you look at SaaS security, you're protecting the SaaS. If you're looking at cloud security, you're protecting the cloud. If you're looking at endpoint security, you're looking on the endpoints. Mm-hmm. But in data security, it's not a vertical, it's more horizontal. When companies care about where they store social security numbers, credit card numbers, they want to see it all around it. Therefore, the approach for data security must be much more wider and much, everywhere that data flows, this is where data has to be protected. It is correct that we are seeing a lot of focus in the cloud, but when you're asking security teams, they will tell you that it's only part of the picture.
It's a really good point. In that way, it's kind of like monitoring, right? And log management. You don't just have logs in, just endpoint or just cloud. It's that's something that's also everywhere, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. One of those things that, again, a company, a healthcare related, a company, digital healthcare, they care that the PHI, the health related information of their customers is being kept safely. And they don't care where that is. You're right.
And, I think one of the things we really struggle with, there are actually some startups we are going to talk about in the news segment, protecting data. So almost everything about data is really hard. Sometimes you get descriptors with data, if you're lucky, there's an XML or a JSON that describes what the data is for you. Other times it's, it's just raw data that's not described. So almost everything about it, classifying it, determining what data you're looking at, protecting the data is really difficult. So how do you, with a data security solution, how do you approach that? When you're kind of walking that line of making data difficult to use, but you need to protect it, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I think that organizations do not appreciate solutions that require them to change the way they operate. The characteristic that you said about data, the fact that it can be everywhere, it can be in different shapes, actually, it's a good thing. This is what made working with data so easy in the last few years. So for R&D teams, it's a blessing. It is a nightmare for security teams that have to discover, classify data, and protect it. And I would say something that I use the term of data liquidity. Data can flow everywhere. It's almost like a liquid that you have to locate. And I think that DSPM tools or general data security platforms has to take that under. I mean, they have to refer to that characteristic of the data whenever they want to discover and classify data well.
I'd also say I like that data is like water metaphor, because also like water, if it leaks, it can ruin things. It can ruin everything, right?
Absolutely, exactly.
Cause all kinds of damage. That's perfect.
Yep.
I'm going to have to borrow that metaphor going forward.
Please do. Just put a few cents in a jar every time you do, and
Yeah.
I'll give you the address.
Yeah, I'll attribute it back to you. So let's so maybe last question before we kind of jump into the details of what this product category is comprised of. Going back to more traditional ones, I think it's just the nature of us, our experience in security. A lot of people, and you probably run into it in sales meetings, where people will think of old school DLP, previous data security solutions, and the ways those worked. How relevant are people's previous experiences with DLP products? Is this an evolution of some of the pre-existing concepts and the way those products work, or is this totally new and doesn't share very much with the old school?
I think that modern data security platforms, data security posture management platforms, literally they also do data loss prevention in one way or another. So this is something that they have in common with DLP. But this is about it. There is nothing to compare between what you see today, the category, with DLP. Also, I think that DLP category has gained a pretty bad reputation as a category that affected a lot the business continuity and was struggling against the users of the data. While we see the new category today, for many different reasons, as an enabler, as something that companies use in order to be able to proceed and continue to deploy, to develop as fast as possible without taking the risk of a data leakage in their environment.
Right. All right, so let's jump into the product. I think the way I've heard most DSPM vendors describe their product is they go through stages of using the product. Do you do the same thing with Flow?
What do you mean by stages?
Well, like before you can protect the data, or even classify the data, you have to discover it, right? So you kind of have the discover, classify, and then some kind of policy enforcement, right?
Oh, I see. In a way, it is correct. Of course, that when we're talking about data, you cannot protect what you don't know that exists. So, of course, always the first step is discovering classification. And here there are different approaches of how that should be done. But this is always the base. Know your enemy, kind of. And then based on that, there are different use cases. One of them is, as you mentioned, is policy enforcement, just making sure that data is in the right place. Another thing is risk finding, risk assessment, automatically find misconfigurations, any kind of situation where your data might be at risk. Another thing is egress management, making sure the data does not leave your environment to where it shouldn't be. Permissions, all of those things are part of the big platform that is called data security management or data security platform. And this is what every DSPM vendor is trying to do.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's interesting because you're not just looking at the data, you're looking at all the controls that allow that data to pass certain boundaries, it sounds like.
Yes, it's not only about the data, it's also about the context and the metadata, and I will explain. One thing is finding data like PII in the wrong place, in a log server or in external service where it definitely shouldn't be in. This is one thing, but as we said, like the chaotic environments that today organizations have, it's not enough just to know that you have data in the wrong place or there is a misconfiguration. You also have to understand which application is it related to, which business unit is the right one, what is the full journey of the data, where it came from, who is the user, who is the engineer that I have to contact to solve that potential issue. And that is something that is much more holistic than only the data, but also everything that has to do with the data in that context.
And how do you discover the data itself? Do you have like a tool that people can run, maybe on a file system in an EC2 instance or something like that? I imagine you're probably logging into databases. You need access to S3 buckets and file shares and things like that. Does this extend to, again, with the cloud question, are you only looking in places like Azure and AWS? Or are you also looking in like Google Drive and Dropbox and Box and places like that as well?
Well, this is a great question, because as I said, organizations want to see data wherever it flows, not only in one place. And I think that many of what we see today, the data security posture management vendors, do cloud DSPM, which is, like you said, connecting to Azure, AWS, GCP, finding the S3 buckets, scanning them, which is great, but it is somewhat partial. And this is our big differentiator. We are not looking at data only at rest. We are doing that as well. But our approach is also looking at data in motion. We are analyzing the data flows from those databases, managed databases, through the applications, with all the journey in the applications, and also externally, where they're being shared to SaaS providers, like you mentioned, external data stores, unmanaged databases, shadow databases, no one knows about their existence. All of that is being mapped. So using those two engines that we have, both analyzing data at rest, analyzing data in motion, we really cover 360 of the environment in a way that we can really discover, and classify data wherever it flows, but also managing the different use cases that I just mentioned: risk, finding policy and managing policies, and so on.
So, talking about how data flows, that's something that back when I was a PCI QSA, that would come up quite a bit. That was actually a requirement, is you had to have a diagram that showed how the cardholder data flows, because otherwise, how are you supposed to audit it, or how are you supposed to protect it if you don't know how your data actually flows through your environment? And it comes up a lot in third-party risk management, and supplier conversations as well. Like, if you're going to be handling my data, I want to see that you at least have some kind of diagram that shows how it flows through your environment, so that can be audited. So is that something that your product can help with? Can you actually, I don't know, select a data type and show me the flow, show me, all the places this data goes?
100%. This is our bread and butter, both for compliance and privacy and motivation, but also for security. As we see the data flow and the data at rest, this is exactly what we do. Our customers can, in 2 clicks, see as for your example, where do I have credit card numbers? Not only where they are being stored. Show me the full journey of credit card numbers in and outside of my environment. Show me wherever I have European users' data. Where do I have healthcare-related information? All of that can be done very easily. But also, as I said, it's only the first step. Based on that, you want to see controls about it. Who has access to it? There's no over-permissiveness, setting policies. This is the whole package.
And do you see, that third-party management or that vendor management piece of it as a common use case where somebody needs to prove to a third party that they're handling their data correctly, that they have the right controls and things like that? Is this something that your product, something that can help them prove that they're securing that data?
Of course, I see that using our product, audits are being done much more easily and much quicker. But honestly, what also we see is that auditors today are not, I would say the maturity of the auditing is not high enough in order to get to the granularity of what we do. It's kind of an overkill, I would say. It's much more for not only making sure that you are PCI DSS compliant, but also making sure that those credit card numbers really are safe and secure. And as you mentioned, PCI DSS, I can also here name an example of a company where we deployed, we did a POC of 2 weeks. We deployed on a very small part of their environment, and we found dozens of different PCI DSS related assets outside of the PCI environment, including 2 external services, 2 SaaS providers where data was being sent to. And that was mind-blowing. So it's not, so even if they pass the audit, needless to say that this is a situation that they had to solve.
Yeah, as an ex-QSA, it's not mind-blowing for me. I think when we were talking to prepare for this show, I probably mentioned that I think 100% of the cases, or the companies that I worked with, I found cardholder data outside where it was supposed to be, or the controlled environment. So absolutely something that you have to do. You have to check for that.
Let's not name any names. We don't want to to scare anyone.
No, I mean it's good news. Like that was the job I was being hired to do for them. Is to make sure that data didn't exist out there, and it did, and we cleaned it up and we moved on. And lesson learned. But kind of moving to the next stage here, from data discovery to actually classifying the data. Traditionally, I think that's been one of the toughest jobs in data security is taking unstructured data, even structured data, and trying to figure out what it is. Do I care about this? Is this regulated? How hard a problem was that to solve?
First of all, it is difficult. Data classification is always hard, and you want to use cutting-edge technology in order to solve that. But here we tackle it from 2 ways. One is that cutting-edge technology today is not the technology that it was 10 years ago. There are machine learning algorithms that you can use, statistical comprehension, that have an amazing results. And also we have a lot of proprietary algorithms that we use. But secondly, I go back to the context side. One thing is looking at a stream of bits and trying to understand if that is a social security number or not. Another thing is understanding it in the context of the application and of the business. If you see numbers that go from an application that you see that is relevant to billing sent to an external service that is related to financial services, or if it's something that has to do with, HR, this is something that helps you to have not only understanding of the data itself, but also the full context of it. Therefore, classifying data in this kind of environment, when you have this comprehension, is something that you can do much better than out of context data classification.
Something that strikes me as challenging is, as you talk about the context, like, if I see social security numbers going to like a streaming service or something like that, I'm going to think, that's probably a false positive. But at the same time, if you ever decide to make data exfiltration a feature of your product, that's exactly how a lot of attackers exfiltrate data, right? Is is leveraging that context using a service you wouldn't expect to have sensitive data, to smuggle that data out, like DNS or Gmail or something like that, to smuggle out source code, for example. Like it, I don't think is that. Are you doing any kind of data exfiltration detection or anything like that, or is it just more about the controls and classifying and finding all the data?
So the answer is yes, and I think that here we went really far with the sophistication of this kind of data breach. However, yes, this is something that we will see, because let's say that there is an attacker that does it in a very sophisticated way, but when he does it for an application or for a workload that he got the data somewhere from, right? I mean, he gets it from the database. So when those social security numbers are being extracted from the database, this is where we find it, and this is where we'll see an anomaly. And before we see where it's being, hidden, when it's being exfiltrated, we will see such a big anomaly that you will understand that something is going on, and you will be able to react fast enough.
So because you can connect those flows, there's a good term here, and I'm going to blank on it. I don't want to say paternity. The destination of it's a much better word that I'm looking for, but because the source of the data, because you're tracking it as it. I'm trying not to use the name of your company so much as it flows through the environment.
Please do.
It's a very good name for the company, because as you describe what it does, you use that word over and over and over again. But providence. Thank you, Tyler. You have a microphone. You can jump in.
I didn't want to interrupt you. I was watching you struggle. It worked for me on this side, so don't worry too much.
You didn't want to break my flow?
No, your flow was all about struggling there, so I decided to type it to you instead.
Either way, I appreciate it. Yeah, so because the provenance, that, hey, this came from a database, and now it's going out via Google Drive or something, so that, obviously that, that's how you can tell, maybe this is an exfiltration event, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the way that I would put it is that when you want to protect data, you cannot look only at the data. You have to understand the business context. You have to understand the full journey of the data. You want to understand the owner of the data and the user, the consumer of the data. Only by looking widely on everything that has to do with the data, you will be able not only to classify it, but also protect it well.
So, what should customers expect? Like, how much time do you have to... I imagine implementing the product, hooking it up to APIs, giving it the credentials it needs. All that can be probably done fairly quickly, but how much time, what's the effort necessary to then analyze all that and understand the business context and apply that in there? Because there's, to a certain extent, you can't do all of that automatically. At some point, I imagine an analyst has to look at all this and put it all together, right?
So not necessarily. And I would say that in 2022, the patience that security teams have is not as it used to be. If it's not instant, if the deployment doesn't take a few minutes,
right,
and the value is not instant, no one is going to deploy it. And luckily, it's not only data security. I mean, generally, in my opinion. And luckily, we're not a difference here. So the deployment takes literally 2 to 3 minutes to deploy it everywhere. And the value, I mean, to save the discovery or the visibility, the classification, and also a few risks, this is something that usually we show to our customers during the deployment session. So this is something that they see instantly. Of course, there are some customizations that can be done. If you want to change the classification, you want to set policy, this is something that you can do on the way. But 80 or even 90% of the value and the classifications and the logic of the application, so on, everything happens instantly right after deployment.
So I wonder, one of the things that's really important, I think, with a vendor is to achieve what I like to call the aha moment or a light bulb moment. That moment where sometimes it happens during the sales pitch. Something in the sales pitch just clicks and they realize, okay, yeah, this is something I need. Or sometimes it happens during the proof of concept. Do you have a good idea of, well, you must, I would think at this point, where that happens with your customers and your product? What is that light bulb moment when customers are like, I get it now. This is why this is a thing.
Of course. So I would say something about the feeling that I see in many security teams. With the change of the environments, something happened. They kind of lost control, because when things used to be simpler for them, there was deployment once a month, there was a security audit based on it. So everyone asked them, we want to do this and that changes. What do you think about it? And of course, it's not the case anymore. Now there are dozens of deployments a day. They have no idea what is going on. And they have to ask the engineers what are the changes and kind of chase them just to make sure that the data of the customers really is safe, and so they can do their job. And I would say that the aha moment is the first time, and this happens in the deployment process itself, where they see their own environment for the first time in the eyes of data security. They see all the applications, they see all the databases, all the external services. They see where they have any kind of data that they want to have. And something, and you know what, I'll give you an example here. Something that happened to happen to me with, it was a healthcare related, digital healthcare company, where I said, hey, you're sending a PHI of your customers to an external service in a very unsecure, not secured way. Do you know about that? And he asked the engineer that he was in charge, like, hey, do we do it? And the engineer said, no chance at all. And when I said, okay, but ask him if it's not in that parameter from that application, and then it was really the case, and it was solved in a matter of minutes. That feeling that they have the control back, they can argue with their engineers and say, this is something that is wrong. This is the strongest aha moment, and this is something that luckily happens on almost every POC that we do, and that's what closes the deal.
I can totally see that. Again, from my background, with it being my job to make sure that data, in several jobs that I've had, shouldn't be certain places, whether it was pen testing or the PCI work I did. It's a very visceral feeling, especially when somebody, because I heard that often too. Yeah, no way that's happening. We would never do that. You're like, well, here it is. Here's the evidence. It's happening. Yeah, it's a very visceral feeling. It's one of the best ways to land with a product like that is when you find those problems right away. Like during the proof of concept, I imagine you find some of this before they're even a customer, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, it's something that always happens that you show them these are all the external services that you are using. I guess that you know about that, and now I'll tell you about the risks. And then they say, no, just let me see. What are them? I mean, I want to do a screenshot of it. And the nice thing is that when they have that control, actually it makes the work with the engineers easier than ever. Because if they don't have that control, they have to always stop and block the work of the engineers to make sure that everything happens the way it should be. And now, using a tool like Flow, where they have the visibility and the control of what is happening, they can tell them, you know what, go ahead. I know it's okay. They don't have to cut their flow. Sorry about that. I had to do it at least once.
No, you are well within your right to work the name of the company into what you're saying. Absolutely, that's great. No, this has been great, Jonathan. I love customer stories too. The anecdotes, I think that really helps kind of land like what you're trying to do, what you've built. Helps it make more sense to the listeners. But Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today.
No, thank you very much. It was a real pleasure.
For me as well. All right, stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to dissect the recent Uber hack. So we'll have some fun talking about that in a few minutes.